Women like you don't belong in wings like this. That's what my sister, the chief of OBGYN, told me the day I showed up pregnant, tired, and scared. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. She just looked at my coat, my belly, and my secondhand purse, and made sure everyone in that lobby knew I wasn't welcome. But the thing is, I didn't come there alone. And what she didn't know was that this time, I wasn't walking in to ask for permission. I was walking in to take my place. So, if you've ever been made to feel small by someone who thought they were untouchable, if you've ever been told to know your place by someone who forgot where they came from, drop a 1 in the comments. If not, count yourself lucky and drop a 0. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't come with fire. It walks in quietly, wearing a review board badge. Women like her are why the system's collapsing. A voice cut through the polished silence. I froze halfway to the counter. The words weren't whispered. They were projected, crisp and surgical, slicing through the sterile air of the Beacon Ridge Maternity Clinic. The speaker? Dr. Elora Jennings, my sister. She stood tall in her immaculate white coat, flanked by a nurse holding a tablet. Her tone wasn't just dismissive. It was definitive. I hadn't seen her since our father's funeral. I remembered standing at the back of the church, holding a wilted lily, while she delivered a eulogy filled with words like honor and legacy, and never once said my name. I remember my mother leaning in and whispering, "Just let her have the spotlight." Again. But this was no funeral. This was a battlefield. And I was still holding my purse, my breath, and my ground. The marble floor under my feet looked too clean for the boots I wore, still damp from the sidewalk. The light from the tall lobby windows poured in like judgment, bouncing off my worn coat and faded maternity sweater. I could feel every eye glance up from their magazines and silently measure me. The receptionist didn't look up until I cleared my throat. "Name?" she asked, typing before I'd even spoken. "Raina Marin," I said, barely above a whisper. "First appointment." "Insurance card?" I fumbled through my purse. The strap slid off my shoulder. My fingers gripped the edge of the clipboard, like it might anchor me to the floor. Then, like the universe doubling down, Elora walked past the reception desk. "Well," she said loudly enough for every expectant mother in the waiting room to hear. "Didn't know they were letting just anyone in now." She turned to the nurse beside her. "That's half the reason this system's collapsing. Charity cases with expectations." Her gaze flicked to me, sharp as a scalpel. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just stood there, inspecting me like a badly written chart. I didn't move, didn't speak. My throat burned, but I kept still, like silence was the only armor I had left. A couple nearby leaned closer. One of them whispered, "That's her sister." The receptionist shifted in her seat, eyes darting. And then the automatic doors opened. Cass. He walked in like he owned the air. Dark navy wool coat, shoulders squared, every step unhurried but firm, eyes locking straight onto mine. "Hey," he said gently, brushing my cheek with the back of his hand. "You okay?" I nodded once, but he knew better. His gaze shifted instantly to the front desk. "My wife was supposed to be seen this morning," he said, his voice level but unmistakably firm. "She's not being seen by residents. Kindly cancel the current slot and reschedule her under Dr. Langston. Direct appointment." The receptionist blinked rapidly. Yes, of course, Mr. Marin." She began typing fast, then paused. "And you are?" Cass reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek black card. He placed it gently on the counter. "I don't introduce." I request the receptionist went pale, nodded, and picked up the phone. Elora had turned mid-step, freezing when she heard his name. She saw him, saw the man I married, saw the weight he carried not just in wealth, but in presence. Her face didn't change, not much, but her lips pressed together, jawline twitching just enough to betray what I already knew. She hadn't expected this. "Dr. Jennings," Cass said without looking at her, "did you properly introduce yourself to my wife? Or were you too busy rehearsing a monologue?" There was no applause, no dramatic gasp, just stillness, the kind that rewrites reputations in silence. Elora turned. She didn't speak. Her heels clicked once, twice, then faded behind the frosted glass of the staff-only hallway. Before she vanished, Cass stepped closer to me and gently kissed my cheek, just enough for the whole lobby to see. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence. He turned back to me. "Let's get you somewhere quieter." He led me down a side corridor toward a private waiting lounge. Inside, the lighting was softer. The air smelled faintly of tea and lavender, and a young assistant offered me a seat and something warm to drink. But I didn't sit immediately. I stood near the window, letting the words Elora threw earlier echo back into clarity. And then a memory crept in. I was 8. Elora was 10. We were visiting Dad's hospital. I followed him on rounds, wide-eyed, trying to copy how he held his stethoscope. Elora rolled her eyes. "You'll never make it here," she muttered. "You get sick from the smell of disinfectant." She was right. I had thrown up in the hallway, and she never let me forget it. Now, standing in a hospital again, I pressed my palm to the window. My reflection stared back, pregnant, tired, but still standing. I finally sat, tracing the edge of the embroidered corner of my handkerchief, my initials stitched in gold thread. A gift from Cass on our first anniversary. The young assistant returned, placing a porcelain teacup beside me and retreating with the efficiency of someone trained never to linger. I cupped the tea, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. And then another memory, my 18th birthday. I had baked my own cupcake, lit a single candle in a dark kitchen, while Elora accepted a medical scholarship 2 states away. Mom didn't call. Elora sent a one-word text. "Congrats!" I took a deep breath. "I thought I came here for care," I murmured. "Turns out I stepped into a battlefield. Why does my medical record say I'm unstable?" The words left my lips before I realized I was speaking. The morning sun filtered through our small kitchen window, catching the steam curling up from the untouched cup of tea beside me. I stared at the screen, unmoving. There it was, in black and white, on the Beacon Ridge patient portal. Marked non-compliant. History of missed appointments. Evidence of potential substance use. Possible psychiatric flags. The cursor blinked beside the sentence, like it was daring me to believe it. But I didn't need to believe it to feel it sinking into my bones. I reached for the mouse with hands that trembled, more from anger than shock. This wasn't an error. This wasn't a glitch. This was a statement, deliberate, calculated, and placed just well enough to suggest, but not accuse. Before doing anything else, I opened a different browser, logged in using a secondary account Cass had once helped me set up to view internal appointment times. Same result. Then a third browser, incognito mode. Each time, the note was still there. That line, lurking like a shadow across my record. This wasn't system lag. It was precision. I clicked into the Audit History tab, something most patients probably didn't even know existed. A list of timestamps appeared. One stood out, last modified, 11:47 p.m., just hours after my appointment yesterday. The access came from an attending physician's portal. The user ID was redacted, But I knew. I knew exactly who it was. Cass stepped into the room, towel still slung around his neck, hair damp from the shower. He was rubbing it dry when he saw my face and stopped mid-step. "What happened?" he asked, voice calm but alert. I turned the screen toward him. He read fast, his jaw flexed. "This isn't carelessness," he said, low and hard. "This is premeditated." I swallowed. My throat felt thick. If this gets submitted to insurance or flagged to social services, they could question whether I'm fit to parent. They could file something. He said nothing for a moment, and in that silence, a memory surfaced. We were 19, in college. I was struggling to stay awake during a study group while Alora calmly rewrote half our lab report. We'd forgotten citations, and instead of owning the mistake, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Screw-ups are optional. Rewrite the truth and do it clean." Back then, I thought it was ruthless brilliance. Now I saw it for what it was. Rehearsal. Cass moved fast, grabbed his laptop from the study, and slid it open on the kitchen table beside mine. "I'm calling Julian." Julian Trent answered within 5 rings. His face appeared on video, still in his hoodie, a mug in hand. I barely let him say hello before I launched into it. "I found something in my file," I said, spinning the screen so he could see. "Someone changed it after my last appointment." Julian's eyes narrowed as he leaned in. "Scroll back. Let me see the edit log." I showed him the audit trail, the time, the designation. Julian went quiet. "This is tampering," he finally said. "And not subtle. If a physician altered records using an override after access should have been locked, that's a breach. Potentially felony level?" Cass leaned into frame. "Can we act on it?" "I'll need full PDF exports, both current and your last clean backup if you have it. Print everything, scan again, triple it." I was already moving. While the printer churned out copies, Cass poured a fresh cup of tea and set it beside me. He didn't say anything, just rested a hand lightly on my shoulder before walking to his laptop to begin drafting a formal notice. I took a sip. It tasted bitter. Less than an hour later, we were in the car. He drove slowly through the back lane of the hospital's service entrance. We parked near the staff elevator, where badges were usually required. Cass still had one. Vestiges of a short-lived innovation grant he'd contributed to here. Before we stepped out, he turned to me. "They'll try to minimize it," he said. "Gaslight you." I tightened my coat, hand pressing over my belly. "Then I'll bring the matchbox," I replied. We didn't go through the front entrance of Beacon Ridge. I wore a long coat over my maternity dress, the collar pulled up high. The hallway was quieter than the lobby. Administrative corridors always were. Less glass, more carpet, more echo. At the end of the hall sat the Office of Medical Ethics. A single secretary looked up as we approached. She recognized Cass first, then registered me. "I need to file a formal complaint," I said, placing the folder on the desk. "It's urgent." She nodded slowly. "1 moment, please." Within 5 minutes, we were led into a room with paneled walls and bronze lighting. It felt less like a medical office and more like a bank, or a courtroom. A man entered, early 60s, trimmed beard, no name badge, just quiet authority. "Dr. Levins," he said, extending a hand to Cass first, then to me. "Let's talk." I opened the folder and laid out every document, the original record, the altered one, screenshots, timestamps, the audit log. He didn't speak for a long while, just read. The silence stretched so thin I could hear the second hand on the wall clock. Finally, he looked up. "You understand this is a serious allegation." "I do," I said clearly. That's why I brought proof. He nodded once, slowly. We'll be initiating a review. Please know your identity will remain protected during the preliminary phase. But I didn't care about being protected. I cared about being heard. As we stepped back into the corridor, my phone buzzed. A private message. No name, just text. I saw what she did. I was in the room, willing to talk. She almost cost me my baby, Marla said, voice low, and no one listened. The cafe on South Main was half empty, golden with late afternoon sun slanting through the windows. Dust danced above the wooden tables. I arrived early, my coat still buttoned despite the warmth. Fingers curled around a lukewarm latte I hadn't touched. My other hand twitched slightly, tracing the rim of the ceramic cup as if mapping out something invisible. Before Marla arrived, a memory surfaced without permission. 5th grade science fair. I had spent the entire summer building a circulatory system model from clay and straws. I handwrote every explanation on tracing paper. But on the day of the exhibit, Elora showed up, took the board, and submitted it under her own name. When I protested, our father simply said, "Don't make a fuss. Your sister needs the grade to get into med school. You should learn to share." Elora erased my name from a project once. Now she was doing it again, this time on a medical chart instead of a cardboard display. When Marla entered, she didn't wave. She walked straight to the far corner and sat down. Her knit hat was pulled low, tote bag clutched tight to her side. Our eyes met. A nod. No introductions, just two survivors. "I don't talk about it much," Marla said after a few minutes. "Not because I'm scared, because nobody ever believes me." She pulled out a folder. Ultrasounds. Doctor's notes. A red marker circled one line. Patient disregarded bed rest, likely due to cultural indifference. My breath caught. "Elora?" Marla nodded. "I went into early labor 2 weeks later. They nearly called CPS. Have you ever been ignored or labeled because of who they thought you were, not who you really are? If you've ever felt dismissed in a moment you needed care the most, leave a comment number 7 below. Let's see how far I'm willing to go for the truth." Her voice dropped, then sharpened. I begged the nurse to get another doctor. Elora stood at the foot of my bed and said, "There's no clinical indication. You're overreacting." I clenched my hands. Those words. I had heard them before, swallowed them before, just to be seen as cooperative. I opened my own envelope. 2 files spread out on the worn wooden table. Same language, same surgical precision dressed up in professional phrasing. Another message had arrived that morning. She dismissed my bleeding. Told me it was anxiety. I lost the pregnancy that night. I read it aloud. Marla closed her eyes. "This isn't bias anymore," I said softly. "It's systemic." Marla lifted her coffee cup. The soft clink of porcelain against saucer broke the tension. "How many more?" "I don't know," I replied, "but I'll find them." A waitress wiping down a nearby table froze when she heard Dr. Jennings. She glanced at me, quick, sharp, then back to her cloth. But in her eyes, recognition. She knew something. Another memory flashed. Senior year. I had been invited to present a community outreach project at a statewide student conference. I'd prepared all week. The night before the submission, Elora came into my room and said, "You shouldn't go. It won't help your college apps. Let me submit it instead. I can write it more professionally." I resisted. Our parents sighed. "Elora needs this for med school. You'll have other chances." Other chances. That phrase had always meant, this one belongs to someone else. I opened Signal, created a new group. I typed the name, Phoenix Notes. An hour later, 6 members. Cass sat at a nearby table, silent. His laptop displayed a growing timeline of data. Same access ID, same linguistic patterns, same timestamps after appointments. He was mapping truth like a battlefield. I scrolled through the chat. One woman described being misdiagnosed with gestational diabetes. Another posted a photo of her chart. Patient presents with aggressive tone. Note for future behavioral monitoring. The air grew heavier. Marla broke it. Her voice is always so calm, like she knows no one can touch her. Because she's right, I said, until we stop whispering. I stood. My voice didn't tremble. We're not patients anymore, I said. We're witnesses. Outside, the sun had dipped behind the rooftops. Streetlights blinked on. At home, I opened the mailbox. Something strange. A stiff envelope, no return address. Block print. Drop the complaint or regret it. I didn't flinch, just closed the box and went inside. Placed the envelope beside Cass's laptop. Someone's scared, I said. Cass didn't answer. He turned his screen toward me. Color-coded spreadsheets. At the center, one name in red, repeated. Dr. Elora Jennings. You know, Cass said quietly, when I was consulting on the records interface, there was a resident. Jenna something. She said Elora told her to rewrite patient logs for consistency in research phrasing. Jenna refused. A week later, she quit, and every chart she'd logged disappeared from the system. I narrowed my eyes. Erased the trail. Number sanitized the battlefield. Cass excused himself to make a call. To Ray, a former hospital IT lead. I heard only his half of the conversation. Ray, do you still have those backups? Pause. Not for QA testing. The internal log sets. Under Elora Jennings. Pause. Yeah, I'll guarantee your name stays protected. When he hung up, he said simply, He's checking. And he might have more than we think. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to the kitchen, brewed hot lemon water, then sat at the table. My belly rounded gently beneath a worn t-shirt. On the screen, I reread every message in Phoenix Notes. She said my tears were hormonal. My son didn't make it. I kept quiet. Not anymore. I typed slowly, deliberately. We are not broken. We're building a fire. A message pinged from a new user. Just A. I used to intern in admin. I have backup logs and templates Elora deleted from the audit system. If you can guarantee safety, I'll send them. I touched the screen, then replied, You're safe here. Send it. Wind tapped softly against the window. And for the first time, I felt it. The spark had started to spread. Dr. Jennings, did you alter these records under another staff ID? Elora didn't blink. I don't recall. 9 a.m. sharp. The hearing room at Beacon Ridge's administrative wing was cold and deliberate. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting softened by a ceiling diffuser, and a camera centered on the ceiling with a red recording light glowing. A large digital display hovered behind the board, currently paused on a patient chart with highlighted annotations. 4 members of the hospital ethics committee sat across from the presenters in a subtle arc. At the center was Chairwoman Alvarez, early 60s, silver hair clipped back tight, lips lined but neutral. Beside her, 3 others, none speaking yet. The room was sealed, silent except for the occasional scratch of a pen. Outside the door, I paused in front of the women's restroom mirror. I smoothed down my collar and stared at my reflection, not at my belly or my hair, but into my own eyes. This is not the girl you left behind, Elora, I whispered. Then I turned and walked in. I stood in the middle of the hearing room. I didn't lean. I didn't fidget. My hands were steady on the table as I clicked my presentation forward. Here is the access log for patient DM, I said, my voice low but unwavering. Time-stamped at 11:47 p.m., the day after my appointment. Accessed through an attending physician's portal. Click. Here are two more, patient B.C. and patient M.H., both with edits logged under similar access patterns with matching phrasing. Click. And here, I paused slightly, is my chart, with notations that I am non-compliant, flagged for psychiatric risk, and suspected of substance use, all unsubstantiated, all inserted within 24 hours of my last appointment. Cass sat quietly in the back row, arms folded. His eyes never left Elora. Across the table, Elora wore a fitted gray blazer. No white coat, no stethoscope. Her hair was still neat, but pulled back more tightly than usual. Her hands rested flat against her legal pad, one tapping a pen with slow precision. "I'd like to respond," Elora said. Chairwoman Alvarez nodded. Elora's voice was even. "These edits may have resulted from a known glitch in our system. Access IDs have occasionally crossed over during batch saves. It's documented. It's not uncommon." Julian, my attorney, didn't look up. He simply slid a printout across the table. Alvarez picked it up. "Dr. Jennings," she said, "are you aware that these same access entries match logs tied to 3 other patients whose cases are currently under review?" A small flicker crossed Elora's face, a faint narrowing of the eyes. "I'm not aware of those specifics," she replied. Alvarez glanced at the next page, then, without pause, asked, "Is Ms. Marin your biological sister?" Elora didn't miss a beat. "We're estranged," my voice cut in. "This isn't estrangement," I said, clear and sharp. "This is sabotage of my name, my care, my motherhood." A faint inhale passed through the room. One board member stopped writing and looked up. Another leaned back slightly, folding her arms instead of continuing to take notes. Julian leaned slightly forward. "We have statements from other patients, and a compiled linguistic analysis showing consistent language patterning, including the phrase, 'patient likely influenced by cultural bias,' repeated in 4 separate cases, all linked to your access credentials." Elora's pen is still. On the wall above them, a framed canvas hung with the words, "In pursuit of excellence." Cass shifted slightly. His phone vibrated once, but he didn't move. My eyes met his briefly, then returned to the lens above. "This," I said, turning toward the camera, "is what erasure looks like. Clinical, polished, and wrong. Have you ever watched someone try to erase your story, then rewrite it in their own voice? If you've ever fought to reclaim your place in a room that once pushed you out, leave a comment number 9 below. Because what comes next changes everything." For a long second, no one spoke. Then, movement. A young logistics clerk opened the door just enough to slip inside, walking swiftly toward Julian. He handed over a small silver USB. "You didn't get this from me," he whispered. Then he vanished. Julian held the USB loosely in his hand. Alvarez noticed. "Mr. Trent? We'd like to enter a new file into record," Julian said. He plugged it in. A folder opened. Backup logs from the hospital's previous system, dated over a year prior. The file name, Audit Recovery Staff Jennings J. As the data loaded onto the large screen, timestamps began to populate. Rows and rows, 10 entries, 20, 30, and next to them, physician IDs manually typed over and overwritten. Overlaying this with the master system shows that these notes were originally authored under Jennings E before being reassigned to junior staff IDs, Julian added, consistent across multiple departments, pediatric, OB general care. A low hum began to fill the room, from the ceiling fan above, the kind of sound no one noticed until the silence broke. Elora's pen had stopped tapping. One of the committee members slowly set down his glasses, his gaze fixed to the screen. Alvarez leaned back, tapping her pen once against the table. "Thank you," she said. "We'll take a short recess." The press release says equity, but they left out accountability. It started quietly, like many storms do. A Monday evening, gales teasing the windows, and the faint rustle of early spring winds slipping beneath door frames. I sat on the living room couch, the webcam already blinking green. The warm glow of the table lamp wrapped the space in gold, but the chat window on the screen flickered and flowed like a current I could barely track. Cass sat a few feet away, adjusting audio input levels and scanning the live stream dashboard. His mug of tea had gone untouched. On the side table, a stack of printed screenshots lay neatly fanned out, each one labeled, time-stamped, annotated. I looked into the lens. I could see myself reflected, shoulders square, voice caught just behind my breath. "You okay?" Cass asked, not looking up. "I will be once I start talking." I clicked, "Go live." Within seconds, viewers flooded in. First dozens, then hundreds, then over 1,000. Small circles of initials and usernames lit up the side chat. I inhaled deeply. "My name is Raina Marin, and I'm here because silence didn't protect me. It protected them." Typing surged in the chat. Emojis. A user named at Birth Justice typed, "Speak." I continued. They called me unstable. They wrote false things in my medical file. They almost flagged me for child protection review without a single justified reason. And they did it under the language of care. I leaned forward. I call that falsehood. I call that systemic. A small beep. Selena had messaged privately. "You've got this. You're speaking for all of us." In the background, a small toddler wandered across the hallway. Just a momentary blur in the camera's periphery. The live chat noticed. "That your daughter?" someone typed. "Strong genes," another joked. But the mood turned when I shared a side-by-side chart. One record clean, the next corrupted. Each line annotated by Elora or through her ID proxy. I read them aloud. Possible non-compliance. Behavioral patterns may escalate. Uncooperative tone. I let them hang in the air. These words aren't about medicine. They're about to be dismissed. From Cass's phone came a buzz. He opened an anonymous message, eyes narrowing. "You're ruining a reputation built over decades. Back off before this spreads." He didn't tell me yet. He just screenshot it and forwarded it to Julian. Outside, the protest had grown. A dozen women, some in scrubs, some with strollers, stood beneath the main entrance arch of Horizon Medical. Homemade signs read, "We believe Raina." No more silent charts. My body, my record, my truth. A junior resident on the 4th floor, sipping coffee, turned from the window before his attending could see what he was watching. Back in the living room, the stream was now at 3,400 viewers. My hands no longer trembled. "They said I didn't belong in that maternity wing," I said, "that I wasn't the kind of patient this hospital was made for." I met the lens dead on. They were right. That hospital wasn't built for people like me. But this... I tapped the screen. "This space? We're building it now." The chat exploded. And then I paused. When I was younger, my father told me something I never understood until this year. He said, "People don't apologize. They rewrite history until it flatters them." A beat. Well, I'm here to interrupt their draft. Chat response. "Let her cook." I needed this. Same document, same silence. "Thank you," Cass reached out and gently placed a hand on my knee. Silent support. Just before the call from Elora came in, I checked another notification. Selena had sent a voice note. I tapped play. Selena's voice, steady but haunted, filled the small room. After she flagged me for behavioral issues, I started believing I was the problem. Her voice cracked. I almost didn't make it. But hearing you, I know now it wasn't me. I wiped my cheek once, silently. The stream lit up with a new comment. User. At internx4. I've seen that kind of language used. We were told to tag problem patients to avoid extra work. Dr. J was the template. I stared at the screen, breath-catching. The mask was slipping, across the whole institution. Cass looked up. Incoming call. I nodded. Put it on speaker. Elora's voice was flatter than usual, strained. I'm suspended. Pending review? Are you happy now? I didn't look at the screen. I looked at my daughter, now playing quietly on the floor behind the camera. No, I said softly. I'm not happy, Elora. I'm awake. Click. Call ended. I turned back to the chat. For those watching, this isn't revenge. This is restoration. For every erased name, every flagged file, every maybe she's overreacting. I leaned in one last time. And if the system doesn't blink on its own, we'll force it to. Then I ended the stream. Ms. Carter, the young nurse said, we've been expecting you. The glass doors of Beacon Ridge slid open slowly. Too slowly, I thought, as if the hospital itself were hesitating to let me back in. The familiar scent of antiseptic hit me immediately. Same white floors, same echoing footsteps, same lobby ceiling lights humming overhead. But the air felt different. I stepped inside, my boots soft but firm against the tile. I wore slate gray slacks and a fitted blazer, hair in a loose knot, and a visitor badge clipped over my lapel. Except this one read, Maternal Health Review Board, member, not patient, not guest, member. A receptionist looked up. Recognition flickered, followed by something softer. Respect. A quiet nod. I offered a slight nod back, then continued walking. I passed the corner where I once stood frozen, cheeks burning from Elora's insult. The moment was still here, etched into the marble almost, but now it belonged to someone else. Waiting near the internal processing lounge, a woman sat rigid in a beige suit, hair pulled taut, fingers laced, knuckles white. Elora. She didn't look up when I walked by. I didn't pause. Halfway down the corridor, a younger woman stepped toward me, fumbling slightly with a coffee cup. Her ID badge was flipped, but I recognized the eyes. I was here, she said quietly, the day they named her chief. I raised an eyebrow. I left that week, the woman continued. Your testimony, it gave me the courage to switch fields. I'm in maternal advocacy now. I smiled, just a curve at the corner of my mouth. Then it was worth it. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. I entered alone, no hesitation, no glance back. On the 7th floor, a security officer waved me through. Another hallway, this one lined with frosted glass and framed mission statements. At the end, a walnut door stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Inside, a long conference table, cool gray walls, filtered afternoon sun through half-lowered blinds. 3 other board members were already seated, reviewing notes. Alvarez sat at the head. Ms. Carter, she said with a nod. Please, right side seat. I sat. This time, not across the table as a petitioner, but beside decision-makers. On the table before me, 8 case files marked for escalation. 4 internal complaints filed within the last month. 1 pending decision requiring full board consensus. At the bottom of the stack, clipped together with a red tab, sat the summary findings against Dr. Elora Jennings. No one said her name aloud. As the meeting began, voices traded data, dates, and findings. But in my mind, my father's words echoed, "People like you don't belong in wings like this." He was wrong. So was Elora. So was every chart that ever tried to reduce me to a line item. I had rewritten myself. 1 hour later, the meeting adjourned. The vote was signed. The cases would move forward. As I stepped out of the room, sunlight hit the hallway just right, casting my reflection against the glass. Behind me, the very corridor where I'd once been was erased. I looked back at it. Once. Then whispered to no one, "I don't knock anymore." I walk in because I earned it. Downstairs, the exit door slid open again. Cass waited at the car, phone in hand. He waved slightly, then held it up. "You got a message," he said, grinning. I took the phone. The screen read, "From National Maternal Safety Board subject. Advocate appointment. Patient advocate position approved. Confirm availability?" I didn't smile in triumph. I smiled because it felt real. Because somewhere inside me, a baby kicked, just once, like a quiet reminder. "You didn't walk alone, Mom." And this time, as I stepped back into the light, the system didn't blink. It watched. And it listened. I'm no longer the woman who stood silent in that hallway, waiting to be acknowledged. Now, I walk in as a decision maker. No one can erase my name from the room anymore. What I've learned is simple. When you dare to stand for yourself, silence is no longer an ending. It becomes the beginning of truth. Those who think they're untouchable aren't afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of being seen. And once the light's on, there's nowhere left to hide. What about you? Have you ever been told to stay quiet, made to feel like you didn't belong, just because someone else decided so? Share your story in the comments. It might just be the light someone else is searching for in their own silence.